All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It looks like we're getting a few more people to trickle in, so I'll kind of go slow through the introduction and give them a moment to connect. As Brianne said, my name is Alicia Lord. I'm the Webmaster for the National Council, and I work mainly under the TA to TA project, which is technical assistance to technical assistance providers, who is you guys. So we're here to help you. Today we are going to go over electronic accessibility, specifically using Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. We will have time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation, but feel free to enter in any questions you may have during the presentation as well. Today we're going to discuss factors of accessibility that are specific to electronic documents. We're going to use some features in PowerPoint and Word to build accessible documents. And then we're going to review some presentations in PowerPoint and Word for electronic accessibility using the accessibility checker. First, we're going to do a little poll. And we're just going to see if anyone has used the accessibility checkers in Word or PowerPoint before. And there's a poll on your screen. Just click yes or no. All right. Looks like we have one person that has and quite a few who have not. So thank you so much for filling that out, and it gives me a better gauge to know where to start. So first we're going to be talking about the different types of software. Today we're going to be going over Word and PowerPoint, and then for the last webinar in this series on accessibility, we're going to be discussing Adobe Professional, which is a little more arduous. So we're going to do that in the next webinar, but today is all about Word and PowerPoint. So Word and PowerPoint, if you are using versions 2016 or any of the newer versions from that year, then there is an accessibility checker built in. And I also want to note that these checkers do not cover all aspects of accessibility. They mainly address any accessibility issues that you would run in with screen readers. So as we're going through the different aspects of electronic accessibility, I'm going to note which ones the accessibility checkers cover and which ones are not covered, so that you know what to look for outside of using the checker. And here are listed all of the aspects of electronic accessibility that we're going to go over today. We're going to go over fonts, color, language settings, images, charts, animation and hyperlinks, layout and reading order, and headers. And some of these kind of get grouped together because they look really similar within the software. So first we're going to look at fonts, and this slide will look very familiar to you if you have gone to any of the VEER accessibility trainings. The standards are very similar for electronic documents as they are for print documents, with a little caveat for the font sizes. So for Word documents, you want to stay above a 12-point font, but 14-point font or plus is recommended. We have a standardized font that we use across the organization in our departments, and it's 14-point font for anything that's outgoing from our office. For PowerPoint, the minimum is 18-point fonts, but 22 is recommended. What you're looking at on your screen right now is actually 24. So you kind of want to play it by ear because the presentation is going to be different. So 18 is the minimum because when you're presenting a PowerPoint on a giant screen and everyone is very close to it, then 18 might be perfectly fine. For something like a a classroom setting like this that's online, 18 point is going to be rather small. So you kind of want to do a little test run with your materials and see what's going to work best for you. On the right side of the slide here, you see all the different styles. So serif fonts are ones that are more decorative in nature. So that can include anything that's cursive. Anything that has like a little curvature at the end of the letters is technically a serif font. And just by looking at these fonts, you can tell that at a glance they're much more difficult to read than the ones below it that are sans serif fonts. So the ones that you want to use are fonts like Arial, Verdana, and Helvetica. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm plowing through really fast. All right, seeing no questions, we're just going to go forward really quick. The next topic we're going to discuss is colors. So I have a link here to a color wheel that is really helpful. I didn't copy and paste it here because when you copy and paste or insert images like that, when they're trying to show contrast, the colors kind of get distorted. So I just linked to the color wheel here. It basically shows you a color wheel, and you want to stick on opposite ends of the color wheel so that you can maximize the contrast of the document that you're using. Other than contrast, you also want to be cognizant of the colors that you're using. Red and green are the most difficult or the most common commonly affected colors when you're talking about color blindness. So we just want to avoid those colors altogether because if you're using red and green on pretty much most backgrounds, then there's a chance that anyone who's colorblind will just not be able to see that there's anything there, or it will come off very gray. That's another common aspect. One thing I want to note about the color and the font is neither one of these features is included in the accessibility checkers for Word or PowerPoint. So when you're choosing your colors, when you're choosing your fonts, just be aware that that's something that you have to address when you're building your presentation. The checker will not tell you after you've built it, whether or not those fonts or those colors are accessible. All right, next we're going to go over the language settings. So the language settings in both Word and PowerPoint are found in the Review tab at the top of the document. And you can see I have a little screenshot of it right here. It's just on the left right here. If you click on the language dropdown, you will not see languages, but you'll also see different dialects of different languages. So it's important to note that if you're choosing Spanish, there are multiple dialects of Spanish. You're not going to want to have a document translated and set to just general Spanish if you're serving a population in Puerto Rico, right? That's a different context of that language. That would be like setting your language to English for Britain instead of English for the United States. They're very different. This is something you always want to check, especially if you're receiving a document from an outside source. So if you've received a Word document coming from an advocacy group and you're editing it and you're going to send it back to someone or you're going to disperse it for more general use, then you want to make sure that the language setting is correct for the audience that you're sending it to. The language setting is what screen readers will use to determine what language to read the document in. So contextually, it's very important to make sure that that's accurate. Any questions so far? All right, seeing no questions, we're going to move on to images. So images as well as charts and graphics, they're all going to kind of fit under this same umbrella. If you're creating a chart or a graphic from within PowerPoint or Word, then you do want to use the designated tabs to do so. So you never want to copy and paste a chart from Excel, for instance. You want to build a chart within PowerPoint or Word. And that is so that a screen reader will read it in the correct order. So similarly with an image, you're going to have alternative text for an image. Now, if you purchase a stock photo from a website, it is possible that the stock photo may come with alternative text already embedded in the image. And if you use whatever file they actually give you, then it will retain that alternative text, and you'll be able to see it when you pull this up. If you ever have to save as on the image, so like they send you a PNG file and you have to convert it over to a JPEG file, then that alternative text will be lost and you'll have to enter it in yourself. So alternative text is what allows a screen reader to relay the image information. It needs to be a short but relevant description. And we'll go over kind of what that looks like during our demos in a little bit. And you always want to make sure that when you're using images that the image is appropriate for the content. So we always like using visuals, but we need to be cognizant of not using so many visuals that they're no longer telling the message that we need to be telling on that particular topic or slide. All right, moving on to headers. Headers are something that is heavily underused in Word. Many people in our office didn't even know what they were really before our training on them. So at the top of any Word document, you'll see this little bar here. I've just created a little snippet of it so that you guys can see, and we'll look at it a little later during the demo as well. But this allows you to essentially create a tag within your document. So it assists in your reading order. It helps people navigate large documents. If you're using a table of contents and you use the headers, then you can automatically generate your table of contents. You don't have to create one, and it will automatically update as you build your document. These are also incredibly helpful to people participating via screen readers and allows for easy differentiation between sections and topics in a document. Any questions so far? I know this is a lot of information. I feel like I'm going really fast. All right, I don't see anyone typing. I'm going to go on to the next slide. So layouts in PowerPoint are super, super important. So your layouts in PowerPoint, you kind of need to think of as your header in Word documents. So this is going to help you break up your content in a way that a screen reader can easily navigate the slide. So another note about the templates within PowerPoint, I forgot to mention earlier. When you're selecting a template within PowerPoint, just because the default is there, that doesn't mean that the default template is going to be accessible. So like I said earlier, the color and the font are not included in the accessibility checker process. So that's something that you have to manually gauge when you're building your presentation. You need to select your template and then say, is this bright orange header really that accessible? No, it's not. I'm going to change the color on the master slide before I start even building it so that I know it will be accessible. So when you selected your template, you're building your presentation in PowerPoint, When you add new slides, it is important to actually use the left navigation bar to add new slides and to choose the layout from that panel. So often what we'll do is when we're building a presentation, we'll just right-click and copy and paste the slides so that we can just keep the same settings and everything. But when you do that, you're risking messing up the reading order for all of the content from whatever you've copied on. So when you are building your presentation, you need to think about what's going to be on that slide. Is it going to be just one picture? Is it going to be a comparison? It gives you, every template has multiple options, and you can go into the master slides as well and create new slide templates if you need to. Any questions on this one so far? You get here by right-clicking the slides on the left panel. You click New Slide, and then you can right-click that new slide and click on Layout, and all of these options will come up for you. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm just going to move on. All right, we're going to move into some quick demos today. It looks like we're going to finish up pretty early, which is great for you guys and great for us. Feel free to enter in any questions in the chat while we're doing the little demo. Let me just bring this up on my screen real quick. All right, so we have here just a general document that our organization created on technology information, and we're just going to run an accessibility checker on it to make sure we didn't miss anything. So you run the accessibility checker by going to File, and then here in the middle it says Check for Issues, and then the second drop-down will say Check Accessibility. When you click that, it will run a scan of the document and check for a few different things that, again, mainly have to do with screen reader compatibility. So on the right-hand of your screen here, you'll see all of the issues that came up for this particular document. So it looks like we have a bunch of pictures that are missing alternative text. That's what that is. So to address that, if we click on each issue, it will highlight the image that is missing alternative text. So if I want to add alternative text to this picture, I can just right-click the picture, and then my options will come up. And if I click Format Picture, this other side panel will come up. It does default to the effects option. If you click on Layout and Properties, which is just the next one over, and click on Alternative Text, it will show you what the description is going to read if someone is reading this document with a screen reader. Obviously, that looks like a file path, so that's not going to be anything that a screen reader will read. So we're just going to delete that, and the description doesn't need to be wordy. It doesn't need to be anything super crazy. It just needs to be short, and it needs to tell exactly what that image is. So for this one, we're just going to say blue Facebook icon. And then it's done. And you can X out of that. And if you look over to the right here, that picture is now gone from the list. So I can just click down the list, and it will show me all of the images down the list that are missing alt text, and I can add alternative text to each one of those using the process we just went over. I'm going to move on to a couple of the other really common issues that we have. So in this document, there are a lot of hyperlinks. So if you have hyperlinks, it says unclear hyperlink text. And I also want to note at the bottom of this screen, it will give you a little description of what the issue is and how you can go about fixing it. So it looks like for all of these hyperlinks, it looks like a description was just not put in for the hyperlinks, which means the screen reader will see it, it will see that it's a link, but it's not going to tell that person what that link is going to go to. So to address it, it gives me little instructions here at the bottom. It says I can select the hyperlink, right-click it, edit my hyperlink, and then it's going to allow you to change your description of it in here. Does that make sense? All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so we're going to move on. Okay, we have one person typing, so I'm going to move on to the headings while she finishes up typing. It will also note down here at the bottom if you have skipped your headers. So anything that says tips in the accessibility checker are things that don't necessarily inhibit a screen reader's ability to navigate the document, but it's things that you can do to improve a screen reader's compatibility with the document.
So the question is it just the description that changes or the hyperlink itself?
So you can do both. You can right-click and you can change the text to display, or you can change the description for the hyperlink, or you can do both. So what we usually like to do is we like to put a description and the hyperlink, and we like to do it in both places. So in this instance, if I click on this, right before the hyperlink, we put what the description of the website is, right, because it's in a reference. That's what we would copy and paste into the description in the hyperlink. All right, so we're going to move on to accessibility checker in PowerPoint now, but feel free to type in any other questions as I go along. All right, so this is just an old presentation that we used to use, and again, to find the accessibility checker within PowerPoint, you click on File, and again, it's under Check for Issues and Check Accessibility. So for this presentation, again, we're missing alt text for multiple pictures. We left in all of these issues for alt text because that's the most common ones that you're going to get if you're using outside consultants and they send you materials. Adding alt text is one of the things that gets dropped the most, and it's the easiest to address. So again, we're going to click on the issue noted in the accessibility checker, and then it's just this first image that comes up. So I'm going to right-click it, again go to Format Picture, and then go to Size and Properties, and then Alternative Text. So for this picture, we would just put in photo of hands typing on a laptop. So I put in my alternative text. We just close the box, text out of that, and it's disappeared from the missing alt text list. Again, for this slide, we also have an unclear hyperlink. So in PowerPoint, I do want to note that if you have an unclear hyperlink or multiples, this usually happens on reference pages where you have multiple links to different places. It will only tag the unclear hyperlink once for the entire box. So if you have one text box with multiple links in it, you want to make sure to go down into every link in the box and make sure that there's a description there for each link. The other really common issue that you're going to have in PowerPoint is duplicate slide titles. So for this one, if I click on, it says duplicate slide title. If I click on the slide that it's happening on, it looks like I have a poll, and the slide before it says poll 2. So to a screen reader, that looks like the exact same slide. It looks like someone just duplicated a slide, which in this case it is the same slide because it looks exactly the same. But if you're having the same topic over multiple slides and you want to keep the same title, all you have to do is go into the title, and you can either note that it's the second one, so you put a 2 on there. You can also do continued if there's only a couple. If there's more than 2 slides with the same title, though, it's good to just number them so that you know, so that a screen reader can navigate which comes first, second, third, and so forth. Okay. Any questions about that? About the accessibility checkers? Looks like someone's typing, so we'll give her just a second. When she's typing, I'm just going to go over to the next slide here. So a couple of key takeaways for today is that it's easier to build a document with accessibility in mind than it is to edit it afterwards. So it's easier to teach someone the basics of how to create an accessible document than it is to spend what can take hours fixing a very messy, disorganized presentation. What we have done with some presentations is, or some contracts, is we build that time into the contract where we say, you know, accessibility is important to our organization, and so please avoid doing this, this, and this in your presentation when you're building it so that we have an easier time editing, formatting afterwards. All right, it looks like she's still typing, so I'll move on to the next point. I also wanted to note that the formatting remains consistent from Word and PowerPoint to PDF, but only when you're using the Save As feature. So if you're doing, if you're printing documents and you do a print to PDF so that you can create the notes pages and everything, all of the accessibility and formatting information gets lost. If you do and that's important to note, so if someone's requesting electronic documents and they have noted that they're going to be using a screen reader, then you just want to save the presentation as a PDF or make the PowerPoint or Word document available to them so that all of that accessibility formatting is not lost. It looks like we have a note here. Sometimes you use a visual for emphasis. The emphasis can get lost, and you create confusion by describing the visual. How do you know when your descriptions are helpful or get in the way of understanding? That is a good question. So when I have seen visuals get convoluted, I guess is a good word, is when there are many within the same slide. Like you're using many visuals to tell a story instead of just one visual saying, here's the situation. So I would stay away from multiple graphics where you're using them to basically tell a storyline, that's something that you want to explain. Your presentation should have main points on it, key takeaways on it. It should have, the important information that you want people to walk away with on it. It shouldn't be loaded with examples. And here is the entire case study in images, if that makes sense. The example you gave is a good illustration. Hands on a keyboard isn't quite expressive of the title page. I agree, but you have to look at it in a greater context, right? So the image that you're using is supposed to add to the context of the slide that it's on. It's not a standalone image. So when you're using images as a part of a document, they're supposed to add or illustrate whatever you're already talking about. So for that particular presentation, the title, I'm going to bring up the title because now I forgot what the title was. The title of the presentation was How to Interact with Participants in a Virtual Classroom Using Adobe Connect Features. And then there's someone using a laptop. So they're connected, but they're not, the picture isn't meant to stand alone. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Any other questions before we move on? So I've listed some resources here that can help if you're looking just for at-a-glance detailed instructions. So Vera has a bunch of tip sheets on creating accessible documents. Some are specific to print documents, and then some are specific to electronic documents and how to use the checkers and the color wheel. So I've included that link here, and then I've also included the color contrast wheel as well. That's just a really good resource that you can give to people. All right, we're at questions, and I haven't seen any more come in, so please feel free to type any in if you feel the need to. And as we're going over that, I'm just going to go over to our contact slide. That's my contact information. My name is Alicia. And then I've also provided the contact information for Katie Allen. That is the contact at the Vera Institute of Justice Center on Victimization and Safety. She is the point person on electronic accessibility. So if you have any questions about specific documents that you need help with, then she is also available to provide technical assistance in that area. All right, thank you, everyone. It looks like we're getting out of here very, very early. Feel free to email or call if you have any questions. We're going to hang out for just another minute to see if any more questions roll in, but I think that about wraps it up. Hi, Linda. Yes, the slides are available for download, actually. They're in the files box just below the presentation, and I just emailed them out about 5 minutes before the presentation, so you should have those in your inbox as well. We also had a question come in about the recording. The recording will be posted on the TA to TA website. So we'll send out a notification once that's ready for viewing. It will be on the TA provider only side. So when you log into your TA to TA account, there is a link that says TA provider webinars. And if you click on that, it should be at the top of the list here in the next week. And if you don't have an account, you can sign up for an account and we'll get you set up so that you can access this resource and all the other resources listed and available for TA providers. All right, thank you everyone for joining. I don't see any more questions coming in, so we're going to close out. We appreciate you coming in today, and feel free to reach out if you have any more questions.